Clem, we were talking offline about the digital world that we're in, and what did you say? What was it? What was the old recording from the '90s? I was not familiar with.
Well, I mean, back in the day, just so that people can know that this boomer. By the way, I'm the last of the boomers because the last boomer was 63, and so when I snuff it, that'll be it. All the boomers will be gone. So don't complain about the boomers. Half of them are already gone. But anyway, back to when I was a kid. I started a computer game company in 1982. So I'm an OG of the computer game industry. And then I moved into multimedia and I OG'd that. And then went into massively multiplayer games. I was an OG in that. And then I was internet guy, OG that. So I'm kind of, I've always been a pioneer, and pioneers are people that have, you might need to bleep this out, pioneers that have shit in their faces and arrows in their backs. So I spent most of my early days being way, way too early to the party. I was the kid that showed up at the party when you said, oh, the party starts at 7. I would show up at 7, and then no one else shows up to 11. That was my business. That's been my business history in many instances. And I was just saying about they keep changing the metaphor for UIs. So the latest lot of UIs are just diabolically rubbish because, they used to say, oh, you've got to do this, you've got to have a drop down here, drop down there. Oh, now it's a hamburger here. And now it's, you don't have the menu unless you click on the profile. It's just, they keep changing it. Keep it the same. Keep it the same. And then they don't. And I'm sure it's because when they go to university to study this stuff, someone's introduced a new course and that's what they learn. And then when they go into job, they go, this is the way it must be done. And then 2 years later is another, this is the way it must be done. And, and it never works properly. Oh, and it breaks and, it doesn't do its stuff. Anyway, there you go. Frustrations. There's only one thing worse, and that's bureaucracy. That's the other thing that's drowning us all. And there's just a massive explosion of bureaucracy in the West these days. It's quite incredible.
Well, and so I want to ask you about your time as being a video game developer in 1982. Now, I was born in '78, and I remember as a kid, and maybe I'm remembering the game system number wrong, but I had the Atari. I think it was a 7800. This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. With Vaulted, I literally just tap a button and bam, I own physical gold stored in a professional vault. I can also take delivery at any time. Extremely simple and less expensive than any other method. The do-it-yourself way to buy precious metals. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike. I mean, look at how easy this is. The Vaulted app on my phone, I can access it at any time. With Super Frogger and Centipede, and that had to have been, it had to have been 84, 85, and I think the original Nintendo, which I had it, was 86. God, I'm really aging myself for young people.
I think that's right. My timelines have got very blurry. But yeah, I was originally, when I was a pre-kid in the computer game industry, when I was a kid not inventing it, but as a consumer, it was the Atari. And before that, the Odyssey, where you had plastic sheets that stuck onto your television screen by static electricity that the tube kicked off. And that was the first one. But when I was 17, I went into computer games. And there wasn't an industry then. It was home computer games, not the old cartridges. It was just when the cartridges were going bust, or had gone bust, or they were in that moment of nobody wanted it anymore because there was home computers. And I was in the UK, and therefore I was a Spectrum and an Amstrad kind of guy, Dragon, all these obsolete machines. And then obviously Commodore 64 came out, and Commodore 16, never really did anything with the Atari machines. They were a little bit kind of offbeat at the time. And then along came the Atari ST and the Atari Amiga. I was talking about the early Ataris, not the ST, which was a bit of a breakthrough machine in Europe, and then the Amigas and so on and so forth. So that was my punishment, was to stumble into the computer game business before it really founded, and start a computer game business and basically pull myself up by my bootstraps as a late teenager.
Well, and at that time too. Now, so if you, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but so what the Atari that I had, which would have been '84, Atari, they were huge then, right? Were they the biggest video game platform out there?
They were bigger before then.
Oh,
and they with the original cartridge machine, And the kind of peak of that was the ET game, which was a horrible disaster. But up to that point, they were, you know, absolutely off the dart. And I believe they merged with Warner Brothers, and that was, or Warner Brothers bought them, and that was a big deal. But basically, that train broke down, came off the rails, and that was their lot. And then they made a comeback. I think they got, you know, spun back out of Warner. This is deep history. This is probably needs a visit to Wikipedia, but I believe they got span out, and I don't know how many times Atari's gone bust, but it's many. But they had one of the earlier home computers, which was a big, ugly, square sort of lunchbox shaped thing, and that was quite expensive but powerful, and everybody was, you know, quite into it. And then the big breakthrough from them, as far as I was concerned, was the Atari ST. And that was the machine that went mainstream in Europe anyway. And then out came the Amiga, which was the ultra cool kiddie one with all the clever chips in it. And that was still is a fantastic machine, the Amiga.
Yeah, I'm just doing a quick search, and they said Atari 1972 is when it was the founding of it. But I remember also during that time in the 80s where, you know, as the Nintendo had come out, you know, it was the arcades, right? We would go to the malls in America and, you know, always get money from our parents. Actually, when I used to go to Las Vegas when I was a kid, my family lived in Vegas, and you couldn't go to the hotels, you couldn't hang around the casinos. So we had to go to the hotels with the big arcades in them. And
they're lovely. I love those. I never stopped loving those.
And yeah, they've made a comeback. They're around again. But you know, I remember the video games at that time in the arcades. They were all those side to side, right? Centipede, Joust, Donkey Kong, the original Mario Brothers. And I don't know if that was because of
you were flying into it. It was Star Wars, and there was Marble Madness where you had the roller ball. There was like Gauntlet with the multiple joysticks.
Oh, that's right.
There was others.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're right. Well, then there was always the one with the two guns, right?
And
like
prefer to qualify, which was what's it called? Continental Circus. Outrun. That was a racing car game. The one had the passenger was a woman with a ponytail that bounced up and down. So, you know, there was all. It wasn't just Atari out there. There was the Konamis of this world, and there was a load of Japanese out. Taisho, for example, with their Space Invaders. Pong kicked it off, and then Space Invaders kicked it up a notch, and then there was an explosion. You know, Williams. They had fabulous sound. They had the best possible sound. Williams. They had the best possible music. Things like what was it? The one with Spy Hunter.
I remember Spy Hunter. I remember Spy Hunter for Nintendo. They put a version of it in Nintendo.
Well, I used to play it for the music because the Peter Gunn music they used to play was such a fantastic arrangement. I always wanted to hear more of it, and I couldn't necessarily get that far to get to the good jazzy bit in the middle. That's so funny. Well, and also, you know, those side-to-side games, right, where you just, you know, like you said with the knob. Defender.
Burger Time.
Defender.
Burger Time was another one. They were like the same templates. They were like some of the same templates, but it was just different format. Burger Time.
Wasn't Burger Time a Kong game? That was ladders.
Yeah. But
you pushed the burgers, you walked over the burgers, and they fell down to the next level, and you made the burger. That's a Kong game. That's completely different from a Defender game, or even for that matter, a Centipede game, or a Robotron game. Robotron, that was one of the best games because it had like 4-way controls. That was a very, very good game. But there weren't all sideways scrollers. There were a number of them, and also vertical scrollers. You know, the
Galaga was another one.
Yeah. Galaxia was one, and obviously, Breakout. That was a great game. I used to love that. Very frustrating. I never get the last brick out.
Are you amazed though, like especially your history with all this and where it's at today? Because now these things, I mean, they're like casinos. I mean, these kids are just sucked in to these games because first of all, they build the arcade in their bedroom, and second of all, they can log in at any given moment and play, you know, somebody in China or the UK, or it's like it never closes.
There's multiple issues here. I don't think that playing computer games is a bad thing. Yeah. I'm not a big fan of the same old game, which is basically Doom or Castle Wolfenstein, if you go back to the beginning of it. Yeah. Of running around first-person shooters. And that's what the market kind of wants. And that is one of the, if not the, probably the big format. The thing what I get very dubious about is the games that basically want to get you to pay $6 or $7 an hour to play them, because you have to get this bullets and that strap-on helmet and I mean Farmville is a classic example of that sort of behavior, and those games never end. They're like casinos. They'll pick pick your bones clean, and I think that's that's not good at all. And preying on children to go to their parents to get them to buy them more power-ups and all that stuff. I think that's which is one of the major models of the industry now. I'm not very keen on that.
Are you surprised that that's where it's at today? Because as we talked about your origin, and then my experience with it in the '80s, and then in the late '80s and the '90s with the evolution of Nintendo and Sega and PlayStation, then they started to build these stories, right, with these characters. Okay, you're taking me back to my childhood with all this, Clem. Metroid and Legend of Zelda, and then you had the sequel, Adventures of Link and Mario Brothers.
You're dragging me there. It wasn't my idea.
No, this is great. But are you surprised that where it's at today in terms of like this exploitation with some of the stuff with these kids continuing to like just hit their parents up and they suck money out of them?
I was a little bit amazed at the lengths that some of these developers are prepared to go to part people with maximum money, and I'm all against that. And because they are hiring psychologists to brainwash people effectively and emotionally and hormonally manipulate them, and I think that's really evil. And there's quite a few of them doing that, and I can't say hand on the heart I'm not slightly responsible for that, because I'm an OG in massive multiplayer games. And when we started out, we had a very, very tiny audience of people that were paying $8 an hour to play with modems on places like CompuServe and Genie and Delphi back in the day. But they were rich adults, yeah? And so the logic of expanding that out to 7 or 8 or 10 or 20 or $30 an hour, and then expanding the market out by basically hypnotizing people, and then the logic extension of that is to bring it down and start attacking children who are the most vulnerable. You can see that is just a slippery slope down from it cost $8 an hour. I mean, people used to say, I mean, I worked with some pretty big names back in the 80s, and one of them said, oh, well, just think of it as $1 an hour. So if you buy a game for $30, you should get 30 hours of play out of it, and that's a fair trade. Well, that's a fair trade. But there's always I don't want to say the criminal element, but it's pretty close to that. Go, we're going to max this out. We're going to get as big an audience as possible and charge them as much money as we can. And if there's anybody stupid enough to go bankrupt playing our game, we will bankrupt them. And actually, we've got a special department of people who are trying to work out how to do that, because we're here to make as much money as possible, no holds barred. And by the way, it's not illegal. What does it say this is illegal? Well, they haven't caught up with you yet, and they haven't realized what you're up to, and then they'll make it illegal. But, oh, really? Well, up to that point, I'm going to do it then. And there'll always be those people. And it's a horrible thing. It's a very, very horrible thing. And ultimately, they're the people that bring the house down on the good people. And they're out. Those games are out there. We've all seen them. And because I did a fair amount of poking around on these sort of games about 10 years ago, because I thought, I wonder if they've got an end. What if there's an end to their greed? And it turned out there wasn't. And I suppose I've got cookies somewhere saying this guy will spend, money on these games, and therefore I get nothing but adverts for those sort of games wherever I go on the internet. There they are saying, "Come on, you put $1,000 into that game. Why don't you play this game and give us $1,000 or 5 or 10 or how much we can wring out of you?" And that attitude, that is very, 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 very wrong. And when I first saw it, I was horrified, and therefore I thought I better dig into this to see if it's what I think it is. And it was. And it's the same as, people that supply gambling products and claim that they don't really want to clear out their customer and cause them financial pain. Oh no, only gamble with what you can afford to lose. Yeah, right.
Yeah, here's Gamblers Anonymous right in the casino. You need help? Here, call this 1-800 I have a gambling problem.
Yeah, but we've got this cash machine that will give you as much cash as you like, while all the other ones will only give you 400 a day.
Right. Well, and also too, during that time versus today, I mean, these kids, they don't want to leave their rooms today because they're so entrenched with these games. And like for me, first of all, there was no internet back then. Also, these games did have an endpoint. You rescued the princess, or you beat the dragon, or whatever it was, and you went outside. I mean, I was part of the last generation that would play outside, so there was a balance there. But
Well, you're not
now,
allowed to play outside anymore. You're not allowed. You'll get arrested. You get your parents arrested. I mean, my generation would do the sort of things that would get their parents thrown in court these days. Hey, I'm going to go cycling up a main road to the local village, town, 5 miles away. You can't do that as a 9-year-old anymore. You could back when I was 9, and now it's like, oh, anyway, whatever. I'm not parenting. People have to do what they have to do, but if you're not allowed out to roam around like they used to do in all those books, and back in the day, and you could go roaming around the fields with your penknife and scrump an apple or two, and all that stuff. Well, what are they meant to do? I mean, why wouldn't you play great, fantastic computer games all day? There's nothing else to do, is there? I mean, is there? I don't know. Oh, you're going to go out for a school-like activity, and it's going to be the, I don't know, gymnastic class or the football class or the whatever. It's all. I think young people these days, are under quite a lot of pressure and quite a lot of restraint. And well, why wouldn't you escape through your computer monitor? So I can totally see that. And the whole world, it's called hikikomori, by the way. The Japanese have got a phrase for it. It's called hikikomori, and the whole world's gone hikikomori. You can travel around lots of places and see nobody, and they're all indoors. Yeah, I mean, people work from home. How often do they leave their front door? So I think that's a societal development, not just for the young people. And I know a lot of people my age and younger who are basically lashed to their computer. And if they're not lashed to their computer, they're walking around outside lashed to their mobile phone, right? The zombie walk. So yeah, these are all issues for sure. But I don't think, you see, when I started out in business, I was so young. All the other people in my industry hated my guts because they were all 30-something. They all had a mortgage. They had a wife and 2 kids to support, and I was competing against them, as far as they were concerned, with not a care in the world. Yeah, because I was from a different generation. But I do remember that the older generation would always say bad things about my generation, and I was always listening to people saying bad things about the 60s generation. So I think it's a given that after a certain age, and I think this probably starts in your mid-30s, you think the young people's music is rubbish, and they're a bunch of lazy people, and they don't want to work, blah, 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 blah. And I think that's an absolute given, and I think they will have just as much fun, just as much crazy behavior, just as much stupidity, just as much brilliance as we did. And perhaps in the future, even more brilliance because of what's coming next.
What do you think is coming next, Clem?
I think there's going to be a massive cohort of AI educated geniuses in about 8 or 9 years. And it's rather than it being 0.5% or the odd outlier like me, there's going to be like a large proportion of the overall young person population. And it's going to be absolutely massive. It's going to turn everything upside down, inside out in a good way. So I think there's this super cohort of young people coming. And it's not going to happen. It's happened already. They're already in the pipe, and you can see just the edges of what it's going to be like if you want to watch the young chess players, because they've all been trained for the last N years on computer chess and chess computers with IQs of zillions and billions, and they're coming up, and these 12 and 13-year-olds are just giants, and they're only half formed. So you can see what AI is going to do to a group of the young people from what it's done to chess players. When I was a kid, chess players were all mad. They're all mad, unbalanced, borderline personality disorder people. Yeah, they're all nasty and crazy when I was a kid. Well, now you look at them now, they're all, charming, suave, highly well-balanced, super smart individuals. So something's happened between 1965 and the crazy fishers of this world and the last 5 or 6 years. Well, it's because they've been educated by computers, not by nasty teachers who say, you're stupid, you should do this, blah, 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 blah. It's a computer, and you either win or you don't. Or in this case, AI will happily educate you and be kind to you at the same time. And we all know the subject we were good at was because the teacher was kind, right? And we all know the subject we was bad at because the teacher was a swine. And AI is going to teach these children everything they want to know up to the tippity top level of complexity and depth. And they'll be learning this stuff when they're 11 and 12 and 13. So when they get to be 18, they're going to be a superhuman cohort of super bright children. It won't be all of them, but it will be a lot of them. It'll be 10-20% of them. And that's going to be fabulous. Absolutely. And I see it, all this futurism that people get into. It's like, nuclear fission's coming and there'll be infinite energy. Well, I'll be long dead by that. And quantum computing, well, I'll be lucky to see that. But these kids, I'll be seeing them and I'll still have me marbles with a bit of luck.
Is there, you got so many questions I have for you. Is your concern with that though, if they're, being trained by computers, whoever's at that top educated, I'm sorry. Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Thank you for correcting me on that. Educated by computers, who's at the switch of that's putting the information into the computers that is educating these kids? Is there a concern for you on that versus the human aspect?
Well, the way that AI works is it will respond to you in terms of how smart you are. Okay? If you're not so bright, it will give you not so bright answers. That's just the way that it works. Now, if you are a normal person with a normal IQ, you'll get a 10% lift. Okay? Which is nice. 10% smarter, nice. If you're quite smart, i.e. up there in the top 10%, you're going to get a 30% increase. So the normal person will go from 100 to 110. The really smart person will go from 150 to 200. So they'll go from being, a third smarter to being basically double the normal person. So the smart kids that want to learn, that want to know, that want to follow their interest without having to go at the speed of everybody else, without having to, put up with some human being being a little bit crunchy with them, are going to learn really fast and get up there really quickly. And yes, you could generate AI that teaches somebody all the wrong stuff, but a general AI like a ChatGPT, all the ones that are out there now, will just take you the road you want to go on. And if you want to go on the road of being a nuclear physicist or a doctor or a veterinarian or a expert in Taylor Swift, it'll take you on that road. And for that cohort that is got a critical thinking and interest in valuable stuff, they're going to get an education like of which no one's ever had. I mean, I can't remember who said this, but I can't undo it. Alexander the Great was tutored by Socrates. I mean, there's a leg up for you. But Socrates is in there. If you want to go onto ChatGPT and say, talk to me as you are Socrates, educate me in Greek philosophy, it will do it. And it will be Socrates or Albert Einstein or anybody you want, Buddha, anybody you want at all. It's all there. It's all in there. All human knowledge has been consumed by this stuff, and it's already there. You can go on and say, talk to me as Clem Chambers, and it will talk to you in my voice, because there's so many of my articles. It can actually, have a chat and tell you pretty much what I tell you, because it's already absorbed my brain. I'm already immortal within ChatGPT. And, that is going to generate a massive cohort of super smart, brilliantly educated children. And it's starting now. The point is, I'm not worried about AI. I'm worried about NS. And I say that, and people always say to me, what's NS? And I say, natural stupidity. And boys, there are a lot of that. And the less of that, if we can lower the amount of NS and boost the amount of natural intelligence, that will be a massive win.
So I want to go to NS, but natural intelligence. So would they follow the traditional, what you're seeing now? Because this is the first I've ever heard of this. Are they following the traditional school route where they would go through the like the public schooling and then to universities, colleges, or would this be a total?
Just go home and type into ChatGPT. That'll do it. I mean, pick a subject that you really enjoyed and you got stuck because you ran out of books, or you couldn't find the answer on Google, or you read 7 books that badly explain it. Or go onto ChatGPT and you can interrogate it and get your answers within an hour or two. Yeah. So all that having to sit in a room with 40 people or 20 people or however many it is in the States, for example, and have to go at their speed. Oh, he's got ADHD. He's jumping up and down. He can't sit still. He's bored out of his skull.
Sucks, because it sucks. Just like corporate America. Sorry, Clem. Corporate America.
It can be going like this. It can be typing it and getting it all there, right then. Now, obviously, not all children are going to go for that. I don't care. I don't care about history. I don't care about biology. I don't care about any of that. I want to learn about American football, and maybe there'll be a massive generation of people that are absolute geniuses in the knowledge on NFL. But there will be a very large proportion of people who will have self-educated, autodidacted themselves. Yeah, and they're coming down the pike. The thing about this bit here is that if it's stimulated early, it develops a much more powerful ability to be smart. Yeah. And of course, you're only going to move at the speed of your school, your parents, and your friends. So most people, their capacity, their scope is very narrowed, very, very narrowed. They haven't had the opportunity. Their human potential has not been realized. AI is going to realize a huge amount of natural potential. And walk around the streets and look at people and say, how much of their natural potential have they actually been able to take advantage of? And you'll come up and say, not much. And I think that's right. I mean, if you go to Charles Darwin picked when he was doing his thing down in South America, they picked up a couple of native Patagonians who were basically living naked in freezing cold, and they took them back to England and they trained them up like crazy. And after a couple of years, they said, "Can we go home?" And being British, they said, "Yeah, of course." And they sailed them all the way back to Patagonia and dropped them off on the beach. And they came back to visit them 2 years ago, and there they were, naked, in the freezing cold, doing their thing. Because by the time they were picked up, their brain had gone into the shape of Patagonian natives who could put up with freezing cold with nothing on, and that was their lives, and they wanted to live that life. Yeah. So that is the way the human brain works. So if it gets stimulated early, if it gets access to stuff early and at the speed of the person that wants it, the potential for elevation is absolutely dramatic.
What do you think the future of academia is then?
Well, it's going to have to change dramatically, isn't it? I mean, if you think about it, a lot of what we see today is based on the fundamental need of industry for educated people that wouldn't get chewed up in the machinery. Yeah. So they developed this system of mass education, which was fantastically good news. But a lot of things came out of it, like socialism, for example. Yeah. And if you think about the way education works, which is you put a whole lot of people in one room at the same time, and you get them to read out the same book and the same subject from the same teacher, wearing the same clothes, going to the same lunch. Yeah. That has implications, because that's what your children are going through. And they have a habit of coming out homogenized. And the world is much more homogenized today than it's ever been. And there's a whole series of homogenization processes that create that sort of thing. So the educational system still, certainly up to the time when you go to university, relies on classrooms and loads of people learning at the same speed. I'm not an educationalist, but someone can put me right on that. But if you can go at your own speed, I mean, even if you just go through that, and then suddenly you go home and you are interested in maths, and by the time you're 13, you're reading PhD mathematics. How's that going to fit in at school when they're doing 13-year-old maths? Anyway. It's going to have to change, because this is going to give vast opportunities for people that want to be educated, and people that don't want to be educated. It's going to be a different world for them.
Well, and also too, you bring up a point where, let's say a 13 or 15-year-old kid, their motivation, they want to learn more in the mathematics. Why should they be held back? Because they have to keep pace with the other 39 kids in a classroom for 8th grade or 9th grade algebra.
Yes, absolutely. And also the thing that is, I think, very powerful with AI, doesn't have that human element. It will just, like, if it doesn't know, it will hallucinate. No, but I mean, how many times were we at school and we asked questions and didn't get answers because their teacher didn't know? It knows. Yeah. And now, even at an advanced age, when I was studying things, maybe when I was in my 40s, I've returned to it and then got the answers that I needed that I couldn't find in the literature. And AI has it because it has everything. The thing that people have to realize, they have stolen, they have absorbed, taken absolutely everything. I mean, I've written a load of fiction in my day, back in the day, and it's read it. And you can't get more obscure than my books. I mean, you can be one of the 3,000 people that bought it on Amazon for sure, but it's not Harry Potter. But somehow they've got hold of that text. They say, no, I haven't read this book. So how come you know the plot then? Yeah, it's absorbed absolutely everything. They're probably scanning in all the Chinese manuals for rubbishy old electronics from 30 years ago. They have just absorbed absolutely everything, and it's all in there. And so you can access all of it. And particularly with the educational materials, there's amazing, because they've got all the scientific papers, for example. Yeah. So if you want to ask an obscure question about nematodes on Mars, they'll have it. If you want to run your conspiracy theory through something and ask it about it and pull it around and argue with it, it'll argue with you, or rather, it'll tell you this, that, and the other. It's all there. There's never been a tool like it, and it is going to change people's brains, because it will expand their minds. Okay, as you get older, your mind gets narrower and narrower as your neural network kind of gets itself all tangled up. But AI actually, I believe, is actually untangling it in some people's brains, because you are getting all this interaction with this all knowledge. Not only all knowledge, all the people that ever wrote, it's all there. As I said, I'm there. I'm in there. You go test it yourself. Speak to me about investing in the voice of Clem Chambers in the FTSE 100. It'll do it. Might even pick stocks for you. I wouldn't advise you buy them, but it's got that much. You're probably in there. I wouldn't be surprised if you're not in there. I bet if I go to ChatGPT now and say, talk to me in the voice and style of Michael Farris, it'll do it. Because it's got all your stuff. It's probably absorbed all your videos and all your writing on the internet, and it's made a little Michael Farris brain.
Well, it'd be a very small brain, but also these teachers, they can't compete with these kids. They can't challenge them. Now, I'm sure there's exceptions out there, but technologically, they can't compete.
Well, I mean, you go from teaching to tutoring, don't you? I mean, you go from teaching to coaching. You go from teaching to nurturing. So it's just a movement role. Everybody needs people to help them along the path, right? Role models. Everybody could use a coach. Everyone can use a mentor. Now, obviously, that's very different. But I'm sure most teachers would say, if you said, "Are you a mentor to your children?" They say, "Yes, I am." So there you go. So that's the sort of way it will go. This stuff always sorts itself out. The economics and the dynamic of these things, when there's enough of it, it always sorts itself out. You see, I should be saying it's all going to come to an end, and humans are going to go extinct, and everyone's going to die.
Terminator.
God's going to go to
Terminator 2 scenario.
Terminator. I'll be back, and all that stuff, right? And it will do millions of views. Clem Chambers says the end of the world is nigh. That's what sells in the media, and that's why the media pump it out. And yes, it's going to be a big change, but it's going to be. I mean, how much more natural stupidity can we bear? I mean, we're seeing we're going down this road to World War III pretty damn quick, and that's not AI. That's not the Terminator. That is natural stupidity, and we can see it, and we can listen to it. You can actually hear people talk it out there, right? What we need is more natural intelligence. And what we therefore need is the ability to generate that. And AI is going to deliver that. And it's going to deliver that, hopefully, in time. In, as I said, 8 years. And there will be a group of super smart teenagers. And you'll start to see them 2 or 3 years. They'll be popping up. 14-year-old invents a anti-gravity machine or something. They will start to hit the media in 3 or 4 years because they'll start doing, quite surprising things. But it won't be just 0.05% of the population. It'll be 20%. And that's the big thing. It will be a big chunk of these kids that are going to do it. And that is going to save us, I reckon.
Are you seeing anybody out there now that stands out to you? 14, 15, 16-year-olds?
What I say, go look at the chess players. Go look at the chess players, because they've been doing the equivalent in a smaller way with chess playing computers, and they're no longer the twisted
Bobby Fischer, the Bobby Fischers of the world.
Yeah, the Bobby Fischers of the world. I mean, or not just him. I mean, the whole chess world was famous for eccentrics, inverted commas. Yeah, and you go look at the young chess players now, in their late teens, and I think the world champions around he's just left his teens or in his teens. I mean, they're paragons, absolute paragons. Yeah, you couldn't want for a better specimen. So that is an example. So they've gone from crazy Mr. Fischer, who ends up having to spend his days in Iceland because he gets himself in such big trouble by being a pain in the neck, and you've got all these brilliant young suave geniuses, and it's going to be like that, but at scale. That's what we're going to get. It's going to be at scale, and because I tell you, there's a whole group of non-young people making a blooming mess, and they've got big tools to make that mess pretty sizable. And it as I said, we're clearly going down that road. So with a bit of luck, we're going down that road too, and we'll get to that place before we get to that place. No guarantee.
What are you seeing then from the NS, the natural stupidity standpoint? So you're saying we're heading down that road. So can you give me an example of somebody you
Yeah, sure. I think it's called America, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, all right, there'll be some people that say it's the world makes more sense in America now than it did 10 years ago. But I mean, really? I mean, this recent lot on both sides of the aisle, they make Richard Nixon look good. I know, because I've been watching Richard Nixon. I think, he's compared with what's out there, he makes perfect sense and seems like a normal, nice person. Yeah, and then that's Richard Nixon, who was the great Satan of American politics. I mean, nobody surely can say that the whole environment hasn't dramatically changed, and I don't think many people would not say it was to do with social media. Yeah, and that's like the dark side of what I'm describing. It's driving 20% of the population mad, all the way up from top to bottom of the social scales. Madness takes its toll, right? And yeah, so I mean, does anybody think sanity broke out in the last 5 years? It's the opposite, isn't it? It's an ever increasing cycle of increased tension. You could put it that way, nervous tension, and you see it everywhere you look, and that's not good. So hopefully this is a counterbalance to that. And you could say that's artificial stupidity. Social media is building a whole load of artificial stupidity and reinforcing lots of natural stupidity. And I would say that's probably not a bad way of looking at it. But I think AI will potentially come to the rescue on that one. But we'll see, because there's no doubt about the trajectory for what social media is doing to people. It's wreaking havoc at every level, at absolutely every level.
Yeah, it's turned into this. Depending on what you're following, it's turned into this reality show where both, and to your point, both sides, the left and the right. I mean, people, Trump got back into office and people thought things were going to go back to the way they were in 2016 or even before, and sometimes I think it's worse.
It's different. He's unchained this time, and I wish him all the best. And that's what I think is more dangerous is that people don't have stopped wishing for the good outcome. They wish for a bad outcome to the people not on their side, and they wish for a good outcome on their side. Doesn't matter the rights and wrongs of what's going on. It's become polarized, and I think the way that I look at it is that there's an info war going on, an information war, with people basically state level trolling of different countries' populations. And they're out there. I mean, you only have to go on to any social media and go, who benefits from this news article? Who benefits from that news article? Who benefits from that news article? It doesn't take you long to realize that it's not just random bloke posting a video, that it's actually at a propaganda level. And it can be corporate propaganda, it can be state level propaganda, but it's so much of it that and I think it's extremely damaging, absolutely extremely damaging, because most people haven't yet realized what's being done to them, and they don't realize that they're being played, and it's a very, very bad thing for communities and for countries. And it's very bad that these countries it's like the Iranians attacked England by stirring up the Scottish at an election, by putting out fake news, misinformation, or just general propaganda that the English were a bunch of nasty people that didn't like Scots people. Well, what the devil was the Iranians doing that for? It's like, haven't you got anything better to do? But once you start going, if you get a news article and you go, oh, that's interesting, just follow it back. Follow it back to who put it out there, and time again, it's one special interest group after another. And that is something that is a reality now, and is a lot of people just do not know how to cope with that.
Yeah, and that's the dark side, like you've mentioned, and I sometimes wonder myself, can people pull out of it, and what is the solution, because it's not going away unless there's no electricity.
Well, because I'm an OG in massively multiplayer games, and therefore the internet. And what I have noticed is that people, they do learn. So remember when things like Twitter came out first time, and there'd be public personas posting stuff which you read that and you go, why would you post that? That's going to blow up in your face. You can't say that in public. And then it would blow up in their face because they said it in public. Yeah, and it took about 5 years for people to start being a little bit more circumspect about what they said on something like Twitter, because they didn't realize it's saying it in public. Yeah, but they learn, and that kind of faux pas died off. Yeah, so people adapted, people learned that it was a public forum that they were posting and not a private talk. I mean, actually, back in the day, I established internet chat law in the UK, and I established it as being pub talk. So if you posted something on a bulletin board, it was considered thereafter, although I think they just changed the law, thereafter as wild, not to be taken seriously talk that you'd have in a hostelry under the influence of alcohol, and as such was not considered to be something that you could be attributed to you as your actual belief. Yeah, and that's because it took years for people to understand the media, and maybe they still don't understand it that much, and maybe given another generation or two, they will understand it, and therefore things will moderate. But this information war, these propaganda wars that have been fought on places like X, that's I don't know what they're going to do about that. People will just have to need to increase their critical thinking. And if they do, that'll be a benefit. But that will have to be an evolution. And it certainly doesn't seem to be out there just yet.
No, I mean, the idea of critical thinking and common sense, it seems to be a lost art. And I think we've lost it, especially, or you've seen how much it's lacked in the last 5 years, if not longer.
Well, I think the real situation has been exposed. People haven't got dumber. There isn't less critical thinkers. It's just you didn't know how many people weren't critically thinking. And now it's been exposed. And now you see the whole picture, because most people are still fearless enough to go on to something like X and post rubbish, and not realizing that everyone's reading it, and on not internalizing it anyway. So, I don't think there's any less critical thinking. I think there's probably more. But I think people overestimated the situation before then. It was like, the mask has been ripped off, and people see how it really is. And that, it all, as the Australians say, it'll all be right, mate.
What do you think then the future is of the United States and Europe in the next 5 to 10 years? I mean, you talked about the good side of it. You talked about the downside of it. So let's play Clue for a second, Clem. Young people don't know Clue. Well, let's get the crystal ball out and see.
Okay, let me polish up my crystal balls and tell you what I think. I think that Europe is going to get its skates on. Okay, and that's a classic negative PR that comes out of America. Oh, Europe is rubbish. Oh no, it's just they're totally rubbish. They are, and they're not. They're really not. So America has been basically enabling Europe, and we all know if people get to be enabled, they lose their edge, and they get a little bit fat and a little bit lazy. And that has been the case because America has enabled Europe and has made it reliant on it, and now that's probably coming to an end, and that will be absolutely excellent for Europe. And there's a big if on all these things, okay? And the big if is, will government decide that it needs to get out of the way of the private sector? The public sector is, and in America too, has been basically strangling the private sector. And if these politicians get it through their thick skulls that they need to let the private sector run and not bog it down with all this paperwork, then it's going to go well. And I mean, I don't know so much about the bureaucracy in America, but I bet it's gone up a lot in the last 10 years, hasn't it?
Just more government?
Yeah. Oh, no, but paperwork. Do you have to do more paperwork now? Do you have to get more permissions, do more documents to say you're allowed to do this?
Everything's a hassle. Everything you do these days is just a hassle.
Yeah. Well, that has to change. Because if that doesn't change, then the West is going to fall. Yeah. Because that's what happened to that's Soviet Union all over. You couldn't do anything. The private sector could not do stuff. It was not allowed to do stuff. And bogging them down in paperwork is just the same as banning it. Yeah. And it can be exactly the same. You're not allowed to do it because you didn't fill in the tick boxes right. And by the way, there's 47 pages of it. And people just go, I can't be bothered. Yeah. So the paperwork issue, and everyone goes, oh, growth, we need growth. Well, just cut the paperwork. Oh, well, no, that's my job to do the paperwork. I work in the government and I'm all about paperwork. We can't get rid of that. Well, you won't get growth then. Oh, well, can't we have other ways of doing it? Can we print some money? No, that won't work. That will just make inflation. Oh, cut the paperwork. That's it. If you want growth, cut the paperwork, cut the paperwork, cut the paperwork. And they will say, we're going to cut the paperwork. Funnily enough, they never do. Yeah. So that is a big if. If they don't get around to cutting paperwork, then America's doomed. Europe's doomed. Anybody that bogs itself down in paperwork is doomed. Okay. All those countries that should be even more ascendant than they are today, they're held back by that very thing, bureaucracy and paperwork. If you cut down Indian paperwork in half, that country would tear by America and the West, just like that. But fortunately, they're bogged down in a lot of paperwork, as is China, as is a lot of other countries. But if you are bogged down with paperwork, it's it's not going to end well. So if they do that, then America is now realized, it's changed the system. It's not, it's considering that certain parts of the world, mainly Asia, have had enough help to get where they need to be to carry on, and not be supported by cozy terms, right? As the Romans used to do, they used to bribe the barbarians to behave. Yeah. Well, America's left that dynamic now, and now it's going to be, it's different. And I think the hollowing out of America and the hollowing out of Europe and the hollowing out of the UK, that process is going to go into reverse. And that's going to be great because it's got this AI coming. That means that you can build factories. There won't be hardly anybody working in them. The people will be working in the next economic activity level up, which is more valuable. So, we're up for we've had an economic boom. I mean, people are always crying about how it wasn't like the good old days. But when you actually look at where we are today, look at your cars. How does that compare to what you were driving in the 70s? Mobile phones didn't have them. Computers didn't have them. Satellite television, how many channels did you have, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? What percentage of people got cancer survived, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah. So, that is going to continue, might even accelerate. I think it will actually accelerate quite dramatically. So it's good. It's good, but when you're my age, you're probably not going to get, the young people are going to see all that. And that's, we can have many more views if I tell you how bad it's going to be, Mike. We're going to have many more views if I tell you it's all going to end next Wednesday. It's the last day on Earth. We're going to have to enjoy ourselves because it's all going to come to an end. We get many more views. Yeah, but the point is, it's going to get really great. And, if you can avoid all this divide and conquer stuff that you read in the media, anything you see, if you see divide and conquerness about it, don't pay any attention. Because that's the stuff that's out there to hurt you. Divide and conquer, because you're the one being divided, and therefore you're the one that's going to be conquered. So don't fall for any of this divide and conquer. Boomers versus millennials, America versus China, women versus men. You realize, according to the media, the latest media divide and conquer, boys are fascists and girls are communists. Everywhere you look, divide and conquer. Don't fall for that one.
The World War III narrative. What do you hear? What do you think when you hear that?
Well, I know a lot of people in government are saying that very thing, and I'm talking about European government. They think it's already started. I mean, it depends on what you mean by it. I mean, Cold War II, maybe, or there is a struggle going on, and it's because of all this NS that's out there. And there's vast amounts of it. It's just vast amounts of it. I mean, there's a lack of philosophy out there, okay? There's a lack of people that go, this is right and this is wrong. And, all this thing about, national interest. Have you noticed how game theory is all of a sudden, everyone's talking about game theory, which is a toxic piece of mass if ever there was one. Yeah. That thinking, the Minimax, game theory, prisoner's dilemma, that's what I call natural stupidity. And it drives people down a certain path, or countries down a certain path. You only have to read history about that. Why would they always fight each other? What's the point of that then? Yeah, apart from everybody's children gets slaughtered and their cities leveled. I mean, that is what natural stupidity is all about. And that's what we have to avoid. And they've been avoiding it quite well since 1945 or 46, because they'd all smelled the gun smoke, and most of them had lived through it up until about 15 or 20 years ago. And then you get people in power saying things like, give war a chance. That's Rumsfeld said that. I mean, people forget history are doomed to repeat it, so they say, but hopefully not in this case. So, I've got a thing about NS, and we should all look out for it, because it's hard to avoid it. You'll be tripping over it, frankly.
Yeah, I was just thinking, that term, you should put that on some coffee mugs and sell it as merch off your website. Natural stupidity.
You can steal it.
I'll split it with you. How's that?
Okay, deal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you so the optimism that I'm hearing with you, do you see some pain points in order to get to this other side, or do you?
Loads of them. Yeah, loads of them. All the time. All the time. The way that systems work is that they work just fine, and the bits that work about them get exploited and amplified, and then the merry-go-round goes faster and faster and faster, and then it comes off its axis, and then it all breaks, and then you start again. See that in the financial markets over and over again. Yeah. So, hopefully we're going to see some, natural intelligence. But you have to keep your eye out for it, and you have to make allowances for that. You can't necessarily and guarantee a happy outcome, and you've got to look to your downside for sure. Absolutely sure. It's everybody's responsibility to look after themselves and their family and their kin, and then you can start spreading out from there. And I think one of the best ways for that is markets, because markets they operate in a way, when they're allowed to, which is a very benign way. It's slightly the other side of one man, one vote. It's $1, one vote, and that's a pretty free markets used to be a pretty powerful regulator, and they still have a big role to play in the regulation of the way things work. I mean, you saw what happened when the market nosedived after the tariffs were announced. There was certainly a lot of adaptation of the plan then occurred. So, I think that markets have a very strong role to play in the optimistic side of this, and therefore it's always a good idea to be involved.
Are you seeing the financial markets breaking at this point, or are we on the precipice of it breaking? Or where do you see it today?
I see the American markets in a narrow range, Mag 7 and a couple of other ones, Mag 9, as being a little bit worrisome. But they've been worrisome for a long, long time. Okay? And I would say that there's a strong possibility that they will go into a bubble phase. And if they do, there will be an almighty crash on the other side of that. And people should watch out for that and make sure that if it goes vertical, if it keeps going, at its nice diagonal, that's fine. But if it suddenly goes vertical, then you should be, counting your money and looking for the exit. Because, and just go back to all the other historical verticals that have been, and try to pick your spot and your tactic about what you're going to do if it goes into a bubble, because bubbles, never last. And if you're buy and hold DCA kind of guy, you can probably just forget about it, because there'll be a fantastic 6 months and you won't care, and then there'll be a terrible 9 months or 2 years and you won't care, and then 5 years time it'll be great again, and it'll all be as if it never happened. But people who are more active, I think if you're an active kind of guy, then you should watch out for a NASDAQ bubble, because that will be telegramming really a real big bump coming up. And but they're just bumps. I mean, I went through the .com bump. I did exceptionally well on the way up, and I did exceptionally not well on the way down, being that I was a .com company at the time. But it washes out. The point is, which way is the arrow pointing? And a lot of people confuse the arrow, that's that direction, which is them, because they're getting old and crumbly like me, and they confuse that with the world. And the world is not getting old and crumbly. And what they see in the world, or what they imagine is happening to the world, is actually what's happening to them. They're just projecting it on the world. And actually, right out there, right now, there's a bunch of 19-year-olds sat around a campfire on the beach in California somewhere, having a few beers, having a whale of a time, just like we did. Yeah, for them, it's not a overweight, saggy time, and everything's going down, and it's all going to come to an end. No, for them, it's just the beginning, and it's great. Yeah, and that's the thing to hold on to. It's what comes next. I mean, the funny thing that strikes me, everyone's talking about, it's not fair, the boomers got all the money. Half the boomers are dead. They're gone. It's like they can't even work out that little divide and conquer is a load of nonsense. So, that's the place that everyone should start at, which is separating the nonsense and garbage and getting that out of your life. And, leaving some room for some sunlight, because there's plenty of it out there.
I can't tell you how many.
We're going to get no traffic on this. Going to get no traffic on this video. It's too optimistic. I need to say terrible things. Arnie's going to show up any minute and mow you down.
Say something like World War III is coming, and I'll take that clip and I'll put it on Substack just to stir everything up. World War III is coming, and it's going to be global thermonuclear war.
World War III is here. Is here. But what if you want to have that tagline? But let me explain wars to you. All right. There are economic levels. All right. So, once upon a time when we were all running around with spears, you fought over land and food. Yeah, and that took a long time to get over that, really up to, the French Revolution. And then in the French Revolution, you'll go up a notch, and now you're in a secondary level of industry and manufacturing. And they're fighting over resources to make stuff. Yeah, land, obviously you need the land to make the stuff, but nonetheless, they're not really fighting over land anymore. They're fighting over, industry, and they're fighting an industrial war, and they're fighting it at an industrial scale. And that's what you saw in the Napoleonic War to start off with, and then all those wars all the way up to the end, to the Korean War, basically. And it's an industrial war at an industrial level, in an industrial way, and it's not about land anymore. It's about factories and resources, okay? Well, if you go up a level, you're kind of in the sort of war we're in now, trade war. And if it all goes horribly wrong, obviously it'll go down to the level below, and they'll all be throwing, rockets at each other. And if that goes really badly, they'll go down the next level, and they'll all be throwing spears at each other. So it's all about the economic pyramid. And really, some of the war is going on at a level above, which is education. And, are you a libertarian? Are you an anarchist? Are you a communist? Are you a Marxist? Are you a Maoist? Are you woke? Are you unwoke? That is a war. It is a conflict. They are fighting over minds, not over factories, not over land. And that war is going on right now. And hopefully, nobody is bloodless, like all the revolutions in East Europe were back when the Soviet Union fell. But it is a conflict, without doubt, and you can see it on your Google News right now. You can see it there, divide and conquer, bad guys, good guys, evil people, lovely people, righteous people, unrighteous people. It's there to be seen. So yes, the Third World War has started, and yes, it could degenerate. And that's why things like gold are going up, because the cycle of tension that's coming out of an ideological war is spilling into the next layer, which is a media war, which could spin into a industrial war. And that is a risk. And that's why I come back to natural stupidity again. And why, because so many people say, well, the way that you solve this is to escalate. But I tell you, people will say that time and time again, oh, the way we go over this, we need to escalate. And it's probably better to come up with another way of doing things. So there we are. Maybe we'll get a couple of million views now, because you can say that World War III has begun. Yeah, but it's not the World War III that you're thinking of.
When do you think it started?
It's not been going that long, 2 or 3 or 4 years. I don't know when did all the
COVID?
I mean, it kind of started with all this Cambridge Analytica stuff, because they worked out that they could pull all this information from social media and then feed it back to people and influence them. And that, we can run an info war by just looking at your social media and pumping it through some software algos and feeding back stuff to you directly. I mean, how much of the stuff on X that you read today is actually not a load of troll farms? I mean, have a look and start counting the ones that you think might be a troll farm. You'll get to a pretty high number pretty fast, right? And those people are feeding back to you what they feel that you will accept to influence them towards you. It's called advertising, after all. I mean, why do you buy a certain brand of cigarettes? because you can't be a man unless you smoke a certain brand of cigarettes, as the Rolling Stones say. Yeah. So it's standard advertising, it's standard influence. It's not like anybody invented it, but that is such a big thing now. And that is when one country is trying to do it to another country. What is that? That's war, isn't it? It's just not with guns.
How much longer can this go on for? So this is a scenario where it could escalate, it could de-escalate, and that's where the natural stupidity plays the biggest role.
Well, maybe it does. I think that natural stupidity has to have vast numbers. Yeah, because the leaders, good leaders, that's what they're meant to do, isn't it? They're meant to pick the right path. And we'll see. There's another cycle coming up in 2 or 3 years. We should get that far, and let's see who rises into positions of power then. I mean, it is that condensation. I mean, it was some time ago when Trump got in the first time round, and he was in that debate with the other Republicans, and you look around the room and go, "Who are these people? There's no choice here." I mean, obviously they put Donald Trump in the middle, and he did obviously look like he knew how to do his tie up, and looked like he actually had worn a nice dress shirt more than once. But if you looked around the room, you thought, well, this is not a elite group of people, and that's what I tend to see when I look around into politics. They're not an elite group of people, and I think we could do with some more tippity top people in these positions, and we'll see, won't we? There's not much we can do about it apart from go down the ballot box with our one little ticket, and you make sure that we're in a situation to ride out the lumps and bumps. It's going to be lumpy and bumpy because the volatility has increased, and when volatility increases, the width of outcome widens. That's just standard maths, right? And volatility is up, and therefore the range of outcomes is increased. So you have to be prepared for that. But I think that it will all work out well. Let's hope so. I mean, if you go back far enough, when the Industrial Revolution came along, there was a lack of adaptation in certain countries to the Industrial Revolution, and they had horrible revolutions. France, in particular, they didn't keep up with it, and they fell a bit. France was the America of its time. France was the great nation, was the leading power. It had all the money, and there were 30 million French people before the French Revolution. There were 6 million Germans. There were 6 million British. Today, there's 60 million French, 60 million Germans, and 60 million British. So the French only doubled their population. Germany and Britain increased their population by tenfold. And that's because they didn't adapt to the Industrial Revolution. And all the things that came from that and the French Revolution basically brought down France. And that's what the doomsters, or the people that are watching these podcasts for doom, that's what they intrinsically feel could happen to America. I don't think that's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to happen to Europe. And, I think the countries like India and China will ascend. And I think that can be and will be only a good thing. And, if you look at global population is topping out in a few decades. So we're not going to get a massive population explosion and we eat ourselves out of house and home. In fact, in many countries, population is going to be dropping. So there's a beautiful, yellow brick road ahead, and there's a dark, brambly, horribly ugly road in a fork. And I think we'll go up the good road because so far we managed it.
I was going to say, we were talking about a younger generation, and every young person, not that I talk to a lot of them, but they all love Bitcoin. Every single one of them that I meet, they love Bitcoin.
It's the rock and roll of the young people. It's their rock and roll. I mean, my pre-generation had rock and roll, And then my generation kind of had, I'm not quite sure what our rock and roll was. I suppose it still was a little bit of rock and roll. And then it was computer games was really the next few years on from me. Computer games was their rock and roll. Yeah. And then it was cartridge games, and it was their rock and roll. And then it was the internet that was their rock and roll. And now it's crypto. Crypto is their rock and roll.
Where do you see that going? Where do you see the crypto markets going then? Well, let me, before you answer that, I had a friend say to me, we were talking about crypto, crypto and Bitcoin, and he's like, it's like the dollar. There's enough people that believe in it, so that's what matters. They believe in it, and the value just keeps going up and up and up and up and up. I just thought that was interesting.
Yes, it's got a great brand, and it's all about brands. It's got a great brand, and people do love it. It's got a fabulous mythology behind it. It can easily be $1 million a coin, but then a pint of beer can be easily $100. So, has it gone up much in real terms since our previous peak? Not really. Yeah. So, there's the innumeracy issue that doesn't harm Bitcoin at all. Where's it going? I should think it's hard to imagine that it's going to be here in 2,000 years. And it's hard to imagine it's not going to be here in 2 months. But somewhere between 2,000 years time and 2 months time, it's probably going to be superseded. And there's a lot of myths about Bitcoin. There can't ever be more than 21 million. That's not true. You can't do this with it. Yes, you can. I mean, it used to be that you can't be traced. It's untraceable. And now everybody knows it isn't. And so on and so forth. But it is a super thing. And there's about $3 trillion worth of it. There's about $10 trillion worth of gold. Could it match gold in market cap? Probably not. Could it double from here? Why not? So it's like, the way that I see it is, I feel now, I love Bitcoin. It's very, very kind. It's been very, very kind to me, and I made very good returns on it when it was a 10x kind of thing. When it's a 5x, 10x kind of thing. It's not a 5x or 10x kind of thing anymore. It's a percentage thing now. Maybe, it might 1x this time round. And then maybe in 12 years, it could be $1 million a coin, but it's not going to be the end of the year. So it's not a 10x from here in short term, in a short form. It's going to be a long, long road from here. And it will travel it. I see it a little bit differently. Blockchain is the technology that makes all this stuff possible. And up until Trump came in and said, enough of all this messing about killing crypto, we need to let it run. Until he did that, you couldn't really be an innovator in blockchain without risking, incarceration. Yeah. And a whole load of innovators wouldn't even dare fly to America just in case they were on the wrong list. Yeah, and they'd all living in Dubai because they were worried that something, that they might have been on the wrong list. But now the American administration has taken its boot off the neck of crypto. That's the same as taking the boot off the neck of blockchain. And blockchain is the enabling technology. That is the enabler. That will enable all sorts of incredible applications to be drawn up. And that starts now, or started probably, a few months ago. And that will mean in a couple of years' time, there'll be some pretty amazing things coming down the pipe using blockchain and cryptocurrency to do the sort of things that you can't do without it. And that will be economically very powerful. And a lot of money is going to be made there. And you'll be seeing people doing it. You'll be seeing people like Elon Musk coming out with the Musk coin, and you'll be able to buy your vegetables with it or whatever, or your Starlink or your rocket to Mars. And there will be a proliferation of cryptocurrencies attached to applications that have real use, that are better than what's gone before. And that will be very powerful. I mean, think of it another way. Think of it as crypto plus virtual reality plus AI plus metaverse. Well, wow, that would be a thing, wouldn't it? But it hasn't been able to be stitched together. Well, AI is new. And crypto, you couldn't really stitch that into a metaverse because you'd get in big trouble if you did that. Because they would be saying, oh, you're selling securities. Oh, yeah, wear this orange jumpsuit. Go sit next to Sam. And now that way of putting people off is gone now. So you can write a metaverse with AI in VR with a cryptocurrency on a blockchain. And that's the sort of thing that was going to, set a few new billionaires out there.
Would you put mining in there in that category as well, like in a different category in terms of blockchain is the future, because now the boot has been taken off the back of the neck in the crypto market? Would gold mining as well be in there?
Well, there's a lot of crypto mining in America already anyway. I mean, they've never really held off mining. I mean, the proof of there's proof of stake and proof of work, and mining is proof of work. And mining with proof of work has been looked down upon because it uses a lot of energy. Well, AI is going to use 10 times more than that. But nonetheless, mining has its issues, but it's been something that's been going on in Bitcoin in America big time for quite a long time. Proof of stake is what most cryptos are based on. And that's where an oligarchy of computer owners club together and look after the blockchain. And it's not anywhere near as energy intensive as proof of work. But proof of stake has all sorts of problems, I believe, but mainly because it's people. And you know what people are like. You get the Bankman-Freuds and you get all those geezers out there doing their human thing. Whereas with proof of work, it's just machines, and you just keep them running, or try to keep them all running, try to keep them all cool, and try to keep them all with enough power, and it does its thing. So there's a lot less human element to spoil the picture in the way that those cryptos work. So Bitcoin, proof of work, in my book, the power of Bitcoin is that it is proof of work, and that will help keep its position for quite some time to come. And mining, therefore, it's not a game for the member of the public, because people can do it at scale and undercut you, and they can buy their own power stations and get 3 cent a kilowatt hour, and you're paying 8 or 12, or in Europe 40 or something like that. So you can't really compete with that model. But mining, I used to do quite a lot of that back in the day, and it's an interesting dynamic. But again, it's one of those slightly shady corners of the crypto sphere. Lots of people with gold sunglasses and slick back hair saying, "Hey, we're into mining. We're really good at that." Yeah. So don't do that anymore.
Clem, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me on Forbes. You can find me on X at Clem Chambers. You can find me about the place on podcasts like yours. I'm starting a new website come the autumn called a new FN. It should have been the summer, but you know what software development's like. We're planning to do something new for a change in the financial network area. There's a lot of very, very old sites out there, and we're hoping to jazz up the whole format a bit. So yeah, you can buy some of my ancient investment books on Amazon. They're easy read, but Forbes is where you'll see most of my stuff, and I write quite a few articles a month, and you can go back forever. I think you can go back further. I started writing for them about 2003, something like that. So my contract with them is so old, it's in Latin. And all my stuff is still there, so you can see how much rubbish I was talking or not, as the case may be. And I think you'll be surprised that this crazy Brit has not been so wrong. Clem, which is why I live here, which is Monaco.
Is that where you live?
Yeah.
Is that a real photo?
It's out my window on that side, but if I sit with my back to it, it's it looks like you're interviewing a terrorist. Oh. So I use that as my backdrop.
Clem, I enjoyed this conversation. Love to have you back on and talk further and get your insights on where things are at and where things are going. So I appreciate you taking the time, and can't wait to chat with you again.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thanks. And let's put that tagline up there. It's the end of the world tomorrow, and get those millions of views, and then we'll disappoint them with some optimism.
Mic drop.